All right, so let's get started inside Photoshop. So we have this layer and then we have this little sky here. So right now this is small because I just took this image, like a low resolution image from the internet. We're going to right now transform this, make it bigger, equal to this image. And before that, I just want to make a copy of this foreground image. So I can just right click on it, click on duplicate layer. I can also press Ctrl J or Command and J and just move this copy down just for reference. Okay. So one more thing I just want to point out before we get started is that this is going to be a long edit, and in the previous edits we just finished everything quickly, so you just saved it and it opened in Lightroom. But this is a kind of edit where you might want to take your time, close Photoshop, come back to it again. So what you can do is whenever you feel like stopping, you can go to File, you can go to Save As, and then save this file as a TIFF or a TIFF file. Okay, so what that allows you to do is it saves it like a project document, and you can open this later in Photoshop to continue working. And you can also, once you're done with your working, you can open this later on by importing this TIFF file into Lightroom. So it'll take in account all the changes that you've made here. And you can, similar to how we click on save and it automatically opened in Lightroom, you just have to do it manually, that you import the TIFF file in Lightroom and it'll begin the process from the post Photoshop work. Okay, thought I'll just point that out. Now let's get started with this image. The first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this distraction, this big branch, because we're not going to need this anyway. So I'm going to select my main layer here, the top one. We're going to be working on this, so make sure this is highlighted. And if you've done my Photoshop for Beginners course, the tool that we use to remove big distractions like this is the Content Aware tool. And how that works is you can go over to your lasso tool to make a manual selection around it. So we're basically just encompassing this whole distraction. Okay, make sure you don't touch the cart here. Be very careful here. And boom, just this, and just encompass it like this together. And you can see it selects it. Then you can go to Edit. You can go to Fill. And you can select from Content, you can select Content Aware. So Photoshop just will stitch, everything using its Content Aware algorithm, and it'll just go away, whatever's inside the selection. And sometimes it can just take a bit of time to render this, but boom, you can see. And the important thing is, you can see if I zoom in, we avoided touching the cart. Sometimes if you touch what is necessary or what is essential, that part can come inside the selection. Okay, in that case, not a big deal. You can do Content Aware on that part again by encompassing it, Edit, Fill, Content Aware. Now I'm just going to press Ctrl D or Command and D to deselect this, and boom, we're ready to start our work right now. Now, before we start anything, I'm just going to hide this top layer, and let's even hide this, the reference layer. And I just want to make this bigger. Okay, so you can select this layer, make sure you can right click, layer 1 is selected, you can see it's highlighted, press Ctrl T or Command and T and make this as big as the canvas. Okay, right now, it doesn't matter what part of the sky is coming in the frame. Right now, we're just interested in just making it equal to the canvas size. Okay, and this is going to be very important when we do select and mask to refine our selection. So you'll understand why this is the case. Later on, we can move it up and down once we've replaced the sky. Okay, I can keep this reference image hidden, no problem. But now we can see we have the sky, which is big enough. Okay, now forget about the sky right now. Okay, for now, what we are interested right now is in making an accurate selection of this sky so that we can get rid of it. Okay, now in the Goa image where we just had those rocks, it was pretty easy to make a distinct selection of the foreground from the sky, right? But here, if I try to select the foreground by using the quick selection tool, which normally does a good job, but here it's a challenging image. In fact, this image is so challenging. If you can do this whole edit properly, trust me, you can replace the sky in any image. That's why I purposely put this in this course. It's a fairly challenging edit, but we're going to get through this. Okay, so if I just take the quick selection tool like this and just try to run it like this on the foreground, you can see it kind of does an okay job, right? But it's still not very accurate, right? I can select the whole foreground like this. But what is the problem? If I zoom in, this time we have trees. Okay, and trees are not that easy. Why? Because they have these gaps through which the sky is also shown. So how can we select the sky accurately here, right? And it's very important to get your selection, your first rough selection should be very accurate, because remember, how does select and mask work? Once we take this rough selection, We go into select and mask. How does select and mask work? It works by, when you start refining this, Photoshop will refine your selection according to what you selected initially. That is the reference point it uses. So if the sky is coming here in your original selection, Photoshop, once you start refining it like this, you can see it still does a good job, but it will miss a lot of areas. Why? Because your original selection also had something that you want to remove. You want to remove the sky, but your original selection also has that sky. So Photoshop might think that some of the tonal ranges here are okay to keep, okay, which is not what we want. So we want to accurately select these darker tones, and we want to avoid selecting the sky. So the question is, I'm going to click on cancel. Question is, how can we do that? Well, there's a very good tool which I've also shown you in my Photoshop for Beginners course. So right now I'm just going to press Control D, Command D to deselect. And we're going to go to select, and we're going to go to color range. This is an option which will easily allow you to select the sky or the foreground. It doesn't matter which one you select, because you can always inverse a selection by going to select and clicking on inverse, okay? So even if you select the sky properly, if you just inverse that selection, it's just going to select the foreground properly, okay? So what can we do to select one of these things properly? So we're going to select the sky properly, and then we inverse it to select the foreground. So it's very easy using the color range. How the color range tool works is, and you may not be seeing this black and white look, that's because in the selection preview, none might be selected, and you may only be seeing the black and white look here. White means something is selected. Black means something will not be selected when you click on OK. So let me first explain you how this works. So in the select part here, we have sample colors, right? Now let's say for some reason, I'm just giving you an example. For some reason, we want to select this blue color from this card, only the blue color from this whole image. So what I can do is go over to sample colors. By default, this eyedropper comes instead of the cursor, and I can just click anywhere where the blue color is, and boom, it just selects. You can see the white part has now come on wherever the blue color is. So if I click on OK, we just select the blue color, right? This is how color range works. I'm going to press Control D, Control or Command D to deselect. I'm going to go to color range again. Similarly, what I can do is I can click anywhere on the sky, and it starts to select this color. I can also add to the selection by, let's say, you can see it selected most of the sky, but some of it here is coming like gray. Okay, in fact, just to get a better look, you can go to selection preview and click on grayscale. So you'll actually see this in a bigger way. So you can see most of the white stuff, that means this is going to be selected. But there's some amount here also. So I can press shift. You can see this plus sign comes to the eyedropper, just like with our selection tool. And I can add this color also by clicking on it. Boom. And you can see it takes in this also. But then it takes in a lot of these tonal ranges from the foreground also. But that's not going to be a problem like I'm going to be showing you. Okay, an easier way to do it is, I'm just going to click on cancel. You can go to select, you can go to color range. Instead of selecting these colors here, in cases of sky, because it has a separate tonal range, it's very bright as compared to the foreground. What you can do is, just from this drop down menu, you can also select highlights. That's the second way. You can see with highlights, it just selects automatically the bright range in your shot. Okay, which just makes it slightly easier. Okay, and you can even move around these sliders to further fine tune. So I can go to grayscale just to see what it's selecting. And I can use these sliders to fine tune my selection. You can see like this. So maybe I can just decrease the tolerance just here. So not enough of the foreground is coming. But if I zoom in here by pressing Control plus or Command and plus, I want to make sure that those gaps within the trees are taken for sure. Okay, something like this. And I can just click on OK. And you can see now, this has selected even those little parts in this between those trees, which was not possible with the quick selection tool like we saw before. So we're getting a much more accurate selection, but there's one problem. The problem is there were some tonal ranges which were white in the foreground also. For example, this cover of this hut is also equal to this. So it has taken this selection also. But what we can do here, we can manually remove this by going to our lasso tool. And what is the button you press to minus from a selection? Alt or Option, right? So what I can do is I can press Alt or Option and then select all the parts which are a part of the foreground, where we don't want the sky, where the sky is not selected, but our foreground is like this. You can see like this house also. Okay, and just run it across like this, and all this will disappear from your original selection. And maybe this little bit of this house is left, so I can just select this also. Boom. Now we just have the sky, right? We have a very accurate selection of only the sky, even through the gaps of the trees. Now we want to select the foreground. Remember, you can proceed with the sky also. A lot of people do that, but I like to do it with the foreground, and you'll come to know that later when we go to select and mask. So it's very easy. Once you have the sky, how do you accurately select the foreground? Well, just go to select, click on inverse. Just reverses the selection. Now we have an accurate selection of the foreground. That means the trees, the pathway, the cart, and all these things, right? And now is the time where we can go over to select and go to select and mask. And now is the time that we can start to refine the selection.